The flight through crystal canyons. The crystal canyons of Kasara stretched before them like a maze of frozen lightning, each surface reflecting and refracting light until the world became a kaleidoscope of possibility. Orion pulled Lithia through a narrow passage, their boots crunching on crystal and gravel as the roar of pursuit engines echoed behind them. "They're getting closer," Lithia gasped, her hand tight in his. "I know." Orion scanned the canyon walls, searching for anything they could use. The crystals here grew in massive formations, some as tall as buildings, creating countless hiding spots, but also countless dead ends. "There, see that overhang?" He pointed to where two crystal formations leaned together, creating a cave-like space barely visible from above. Without waiting for confirmation, he guided them toward it, pulling Lithia inside just as a hovercraft screamed past overhead, its searchlight painting the canyon in harsh white. The cave was smaller than it had appeared, forcing them to press close together in the darkness. Orion could feel Lithia's heart racing against his chest, could hear her trying to control her breathing as footsteps crunched somewhere nearby. Hunter teams on the ground now, not just air support. "The tracking software says the signal died in this sector," a male voice drifted through the crystals, distorted and multiplied by the reflective surfaces. "Spread out, they can't have gone far." Lithia's fingers dug into Orion's jacket. He wrapped his arms around her, one hand moving to the back of her head, holding her close as they waited in breathless silence. Minutes stretched like hours as the footsteps moved around them, sometimes close enough that Orion could see shadows playing across the crystal walls. Finally, mercifully, the sounds receded. The hovercraft's engines faded to distant hums. But neither of them moved, afraid that even breathing too loudly might shatter their fragile safety. "How long do we wait?" Lithia whispered against his neck, her breath warm on his skin. "Until we're sure." Orion's voice was equally quiet. His hand stroked her hair absently, a gesture of comfort that had become natural somewhere between the temple and here. "Tell me about the maps, the worlds you found." "Why?" She pulled back slightly to look at his face, though in the cave's darkness they could barely see each other. "Because if we're going to survive this, I need to know what we're protecting, what you risked everything for." Lithia was quiet for a moment, then began to speak, her voice soft but passionate. "There are 7 worlds, 7 places untouched by the consortium's greed, by faction wars, by any of the corruption that's infected known space. Some have resources, rare minerals, energy sources, but others," her hand found his in the darkness, their fingers intertwining, "others are just beautiful. Places where life could start fresh, where people could build something better than what we have now." "You saw them?" Orion asked, fascinated by the wonder in her voice. "Through telescope arrays, through data the ancient civilization here left behind. They'd mapped farther than we ever imagined." She squeezed his hand. "I couldn't let the consortium turn those worlds into weapons factories or mining operations, couldn't let them repeat every mistake humanity has made 1,000 times before." "So you stole the only copy?" "I destroyed their copy and kept mine, made sure I was the only path to those coordinates." Her voice hardened. "If they want those worlds, they'll have to go through me, and I'll make sure they never get the chance." Orion pulled her closer again, understanding now the full weight of what she carried. Not just data, but hope. The possibility of something better. "What if we went there?" he murmured. "Instead of just running, we actually made it to one of those worlds." "With the entire consortium hunting us?" "You said I was insane earlier. Might as well commit to it." He could feel her smile against his shoulder. "We need a ship, supplies, and a way off Kasara without being tracked. I know where we can get all 3. "Where?" "The consortium maintains a supply depot on the far side of the canyon system. Small operation, usually only 3 or 4 people manning it. They won't expect us to go toward their infrastructure." Lithia laughed quietly, the sound equal parts disbelief and admiration. "You want to steal from them?" "Call it poetic justice." Orion's hand traced down her spine, a touch that started as comfort but lingered as something more. Besides, they already think we're criminals. Might as well earn the title. Orion Drake, you're full of surprises. Good surprises. The best kind. Her hand came up to touch his face in the darkness, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw, the curve of his lips. The kind that make me think maybe, just maybe, we could actually do this, could actually make it. We will, he said with a conviction that surprised him. Together. The word hung between them. Together, weighted with promise and possibility. In the crystal cave's darkness, surrounded by danger on all sides, they'd found something neither had expected, a partnership that had become trust. Trust that was becoming something deeper, something neither quite dared to name yet. Lithia's hand slid to the back of Orion's neck, pulling him down until their lips met again. This kiss was different from the gentle one in the temple. This was urgent, desperate, fueled by adrenaline and fear, and the raw need to feel alive in the face of death. Orion responded in kind, his arms tightening around her, one hand tangling in her hair, while the other pressed against the small of her back. They broke apart, breathing hard, foreheads pressed together in the darkness. We should probably focus on surviving, Lithia managed, though she made no move to pull away. Probably, Orion agreed, his thumb tracing circles on her hip. This time they kissed was slower, deeper, a thorough exploration that spoke of promises and possibilities beyond mere survival. Lithia's hand threaded through his hair, and Orion's hands mapped the curve of her spine, the shape of her waist, committing every detail to memory, as if this moment might be all they had. When they finally surfaced, the canyon outside had grown quiet. The hunters had moved on, at least for now, but neither Orion nor Lithia rushed to leave their shelter. Instead, they stayed pressed together in the darkness, sharing warmth and whispered plans, and the kind of intimacy that comes from facing dangers side by side. "Tell me about you," Lithia said softly. "Before the mapping, before the running, who were you?" Orion was quiet, unused to sharing his past, but here, with her, the words came easier. "I was a navigator for colony ships, helped families find new homes among the stars. I was good at it, too good. The consortium noticed, offered me a contract I couldn't refuse. Except it wasn't a contract. It was indentured servitude dressed up in legal language. 3 years of mapping whatever they wanted, going wherever they demanded, no questions asked." "And you did it?" There was no judgment in Lithia's tone, only curiosity. "I did. Because I was tired of caring, tired of watching families struggle to survive on the worlds I found for them. It was easier to just fly solo, collect my payment, and move on." He pressed his lips to her forehead. "Until a fugitive archaeologist reminded me that some things are worth caring about." "Some people," Lithia corrected softly. "Yes, some people." They held each other as the light outside shifted from morning to afternoon, as the crystals sang softly with temperature changes, as the world continued its hunt around them. But in that small cave, they'd found a moment of peace, precarious and temporary, but real. "Ready to steal a ship?" Orion asked. Lithia pulled back with a grin that he could hear in her voice. "With you? Always." They emerged from the cave carefully, checking for patrols before moving deeper into the canyon system. The crystals reflected their images 1,000 times over. 2 figures, moving as one, hands linked, facing an impossible task with determination born of desperation and something that felt remarkably like love. The depot waited somewhere ahead, and beyond that, the stars. 7 unmapped worlds hung in balance, along with 2 lives that had found unexpected meaning in each other. As they navigated the crystalline maze, Orion realized he was no longer running from his past, but toward a future, uncertain, dangerous, but finally, vitally his own.
The cartographer's new map. The consortium depot sat nestled in a crater at the canyon's edge, a utilitarian cluster of prefabricated buildings surrounded by landing pads. Orion and Lithia watched from a crystal ridge as the afternoon shift changed, counting personnel and noting patrol patterns. 3 guards, 2 technicians, 1 supervisor, Orion murmured. The transport ship on Pad 2. That's our target. Light freighter, faster than it looks, and if I'm reading those markings right, it's fueled and ready for a supply run. Security systems? Lithia asked, pressed against his side as they shared the viewing scope. Standard consortium setup. I know the override codes. They haven't changed them in 2 years. He lowered the scope, turning to face her. But this is the dangerous part. Once we're inside, we'll have maybe 5 minutes before the alarm reaches the main hub. After that, every consortium ship in the sector will be hunting us. So we need to be off-planet in 5 minutes. Lithia's expression was determined despite the impossible odds. What's the plan? Orion pulled out his datapad, sketching quickly. I'll approach from the east, use my consortium credentials to get past the gate. While they're verifying my identity, you slip in from the west. There's a blind spot in their camera coverage right here. He pointed to a gap in the fence line. Meet me at the ship. I'll have the engines warming by the time you arrive. And if something goes wrong? Then we improvise. He cupped her face gently. But nothing's going wrong. We've come too far to fail now. Lithia covered his hand with hers, turning to press a kiss to his palm. Promise me something. If I don't make it to the ship, don't, Orion's voice was fierce. Don't even think it. Promise me, she insisted, her eyes locked on his. Promise you'll take the ship and go. The cipher for the maps is encoded in the pendant. You can access it with a biometric scan of my DNA. There's enough residual trace on your clothes, your hands. You could still get to those worlds, still expose what the consortium is doing. Lithia, no. Promise me, Orion. Her hands gripped his jacket. Promise that what I risked everything for won't die if I do. He stared at her, seeing the fear beneath her courage, the weight of 6 months running alone that she still carried despite his presence. Slowly, reluctantly, he nodded. I promise, but you'll make it. We both will. She smiled, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. Always the optimist. Only since I met you. He kissed her then, hard and deep, pouring every ounce of feeling he couldn't quite name into the connection. When they broke apart, he pressed his forehead to hers. Ready? Ready. They separated at the ridge, Orion descending the eastern slope while Lithia circled west. His heart hammered as he approached the gate, his consortium credentials in hand and a confident expression on his face that he didn't quite feel. The guard scanned his ID chip, frowning at his dusty appearance. Drake, you're supposed to be in the northern quadrant. Change of plans. Director Vance sent me to collect survey equipment. Orion kept his voice steady, bored even. Check the priority codes. As the guard turned to verify, Orion's eyes flicked to the western perimeter. There, a flash of movement. Lithia, slipping through the fence gap like a shadow. His breath caught, but he forced himself to remain casual as the guard turned back. Everything checks out. Base re, second locker from the left. Make it quick, we're about to run security diagnostics. Understood. Orion walked through the gate with measured steps, every instinct screaming at him to run toward the landing pad where the freighter waited. Instead, he headed toward the equipment bay, counting seconds in his head. 60 seconds. Lithia would be at the fence now, cutting through with the tool he'd given her. 90 seconds. She'd be crossing the open ground toward the pad. He reached the equipment bay and immediately doubled back, abandoning all pretense as he sprinted for the freighter. Behind him, someone shouted. They'd spotted Lithia. Orion's feet pounded against the tarmac as alarms began to wail. He reached the freighter's ramp and rushed inside, his hands flying over the control panel. The engines roared to life, their vibration shaking the entire ship. Come on, he muttered, overriding safety protocols and priming the launch sequence. Through the viewport, he saw Lithia racing toward the ship, 3 guards in pursuit. One raised a weapon. The shot went wide as Lithia zigzagged, her legs pumping with desperate speed. 20 meters. 15. 10. Orion stood at the top of the ramp, one hand on the emergency close button, the other extended toward her. Now! Jump! Lithia launched herself forward as another shot sparked off the ramp behind her. Orion caught her, pulling her inside as his other hand slammed the close button. The ramp sealed just as they collapsed together on the deck, both breathing hard. "Go!" Lithia shouted, "before they lock us down!" Orion scrambled to the pilot's seat, Lithia right behind him. His hands danced across the controls, disengaging the landing clamps as warning lights flashed across every console. Beside him, Lithia worked the co-pilot station with surprising expertise, rerouting power to the shields as weapons fire began to pepper their hull. "Hold on," Orion warned, then pulled straight up. The freighter shot into Kasara's atmosphere like a missile, acceleration pressing them back into their seats. Behind them, smaller pursuit craft launched from the depot, but Orion was already plotting a course through Kasara's dense cloud layer, using every trick he learned in 3 years of desperate escapes. "They're gaining," Lithia reported, her voice tight. "Not for long." Orion pitched the freighter into a dive, then pulled up sharply, the maneuver pressing them to the edge of structural tolerance. Their pursuers tried to follow. 2 made it, but the third spun out, forced to break off or crash. Approaching orbital threshold. "Lithia, there are consortium cruisers in high orbit." 3 of them. "I see them." His jaw set in determination. "Getting the coordinates for the first world. The one you said was just beautiful." Lithia's hands moved to her pendant, her fingers working the quantum crystal interface. "It's called Theros. Blue oceans, green continents, no sentient life yet. It's perfect." "Then that's where we're going." Orion reached over, taking her hand as he programmed the jump coordinates with his other. Together. Her fingers tightened around his as the freighter broke atmosphere, as the pursuing ships fell away unable to match their acceleration, as the consortium cruisers ahead began to power weapons. For one impossible moment, it seemed they wouldn't make it. The cruisers were too close, the jump drive still charging, death seconds away. Then Lithia leaned over and kissed his cheek. "Thank you," she whispered, "for choosing this, for choosing me." The jump drive reached full charge. Orion looked at her, seeing his own hope reflected in her eyes, and smiled. "Best decision I ever made." He engaged the drive. Reality twisted. The stars stretched into lines of light. Kasara and the consortium and everything they were running from collapsed into a single point behind them and vanished as they plunged into hyperspace. When the ship stabilized, they were alone in the vast darkness between stars, the navigation console showing their trajectory towards Theros, a world unmarked on any official chart, a place where they could start again. Orion and Lithia sat in silence for a long moment, hands still intertwined, both trying to process that they'd actually made it. Then Lithia laughed, a sound of pure, disbelieving joy, and Orion joined her, their laughter filling the small cockpit until tears streamed down both their faces. "We did it," Lithia said when she could breathe again. "We actually did it." "We did." Orion pulled her into his lap, and she came willingly, wrapping her arms around his neck. "Now what?" "Now?" She kissed him softly, then deeper, celebrating their survival and their freedom and the vast possibilities stretching before them. "Now we chart a new course. Build something better. Together." "Together," Orion agreed, the word feeling like a vow. As the freighter carried them towards Theros, they remained tangled together in the pilot's seat, watching the stars stream past. 2 fugitives who'd found each other in the most unlikely of circumstances. A cartographer who'd spent years mapping other people's dreams, and an archaeologist who'd risked everything for worlds yet unseen. Behind them, their old lives faded into distance. Ahead, 7 unmapped worlds waited. 7 chances to build something new, something better. But in that moment, none of that mattered as much as the simple reality of Lithia's head resting against Orion's shoulder, of his arms wrapped securely around her, of 2 hearts beating in synchrony as they sailed towards an uncertain but shared future. The navigation console beeped softly. Theros was still 3 weeks away, 3 weeks alone in hyperspace with nothing but each other and the infinite stars. Orion looked at Lithia, seeing his own hope reflected in her eyes, and smiled. "I love you," Lithia said quietly. The words simple, but carrying the weight of everything they'd been through. "I know it's fast, I know it's probably crazy given the circumstances, but I love you too, Orion interrupted, his hand cradling her face. And yes, it's fast and crazy and completely illogical, but it's also the most real thing I've ever felt. She smiled, that brilliant expression he'd first seen in the marshlands when he'd removed her tracking cuff. Then I guess we're both insane. Good, he said, kissing her forehead, her cheeks, finally her lips. The sane approach clearly wasn't working for either of us. As Kasara's twin moons became just another memory in a galaxy full of them, as the consortium's reach faded into insignificance against the vastness of space, Orion Drake and Lithia Ven began charting their new map.